Hi there, welcome back. A reminder of the big breaking news this hour. Sean Dyche is expected to be appointed Everton manager today. Marcelo Bielsa and Dyche both held talks with the club yesterday, but it seems that the former Burnley man has won the race to succeed Frank Lampard at Goodison Park. We were talking a minute ago about Everton's first match for, Sean Dyche in charge, saying that it would be the league leaders Arsenal. Harriet also mentioned the Merseyside derby. But, guys, when you look at these fixtures, I mean, it's a tough start with those first two. But you look at Leeds, who are 15th in the table. Harriet, you said it a minute ago, it's so tight towards the bottom. You know, they're only 3 points above Everton at the moment. The likes of Aston Villa, who are up in 11th, but then you've got Nottingham Forest, 13th, 6 points clear at the moment. It's an interesting run of fixtures.
That first one will probably be a bit of a free hit for them because they won't be expecting to go to have Arsenal there and get much out of the game. So they'll probably be Sean Dyche will come in and see how can we set up, what players am I going to have in. He won't be expecting a big result against Arsenal, neither will the fans. So it'll be a bit of a pressure off experience, and then they've got to go to Anfield for the Merseyside derby, which will definitely be pressure straight back on again. But then after that, like you mentioned, there's a lot of the teams in and around that relegation zone which they can really be targeting to look to pick up points again. They'll be looking at Leeds. I want to get points against them, Nottingham Forest in particular as well. And like you mentioned beforehand, it's so tight at the bottom of the table. All it takes is 1, 2, 3 good results, getting a bit of form together, and then everything changes. The trajectory is completely different. And if anyone can come in and do that and get a string of results together, it is Sean Dyche. He's got so much experience in the Premier League, and maybe that was something with Frank Lampard that they felt like off the back of last season and heading into this season as well. He didn't have experience in a relegation battle. He didn't really know what it took to come in and keep a team up, and Sean Dyche knows how to do exactly that. And also with limited budget, you know, he's got 4 days left in the transfer window. It's not like he's going to be able to bring in all the players he wants and there's going to be an upheaval. So he's going to have to work with the squad that he's got at the moment, and he's got plenty of experience at doing just that. So yeah, tough run of fixtures, but one that they'll be looking to target to get a lot of points out of and change the season.
He's a character, isn't he? And when you look at those fixtures, you kind of think, especially those first two, he'll probably relish that opportunity.
I just think, honestly, I just think this is so refreshing for Everton. And I'm actually really pleased for him.
You seem like so happy.
I actually really like Sean Dyche, and I feel when he left Burnley, it just felt like, it's a bit sad, isn't it? Like, it's come to an end. He's done so well.
Well, I think there were people who thought he should have stayed. Yeah,
to try and get them out of it. And obviously, ultimately, they've gone in a new direction with Vincent Kompany, and they've completely transformed, and they're going to be back in the league. That's fair enough to Burnley, but for Sean Dyche, you just felt like, that can't be the end of Sean Dyche. Like, we need to see something else. And actually, with this type of project, and you spoke about them getting a new stadium, you spoke about them, you know, they've obviously spent a lot of money as well. There's money there in that football club. They haven't spent it in the right way. They've been a mess recently, but actually, it presents a really good opportunity for Sean Dyche. If he gets this right and he keeps them up, he can have a really nice project there, you know. And no disrespect to Burnley, a bigger football club, more investment, more infrastructure, bigger fan base, and it could give him the platform to really excel his own personal goals as well. Which, on a personal, for me, like you said, I like Sean Dyche. I want to see him do that. So I look at some of the characteristics of the players that are there as well, and you mentioned it before the break. Some perfect players for him, players that he's worked with before, and also other players that I think he could get going. All of a sudden, you look at, say, maybe playing a 4-4-2 and saying you've got Mopé and, you know, kind of a little and large up front in Calvert-Lewin and Mopé working as a 4-4-2. I can see that now. Demarai Gray whipping in crosses from the right. Dwight McNeil. We'll talk about Anthony Gordon if he stays. You know, there's something there for him to work with, and especially if Everton aren't going to spend much in this window, which looks potentially likely. Maybe if Anthony Gordon does go and it frees up some funds, because they have spent an awful lot already. So even if they don't, they've got a manager there who knows how to work on smaller budgets.
And what's quite interesting on that note, we also now understand that Michael Keane is going to remain at Everton. He's a big fan of Sean Dyche, and Sean Dyche is a massive fan of him. They had great success together at Burnley. I think it comes at such a good time for Sean Dyche. He had 10 years at Burnley, but he's had a break since then. He was sacked in April, so he's had nearly 12 months to rejuvenate himself, refresh, and get ready for this next challenge. The only concern you would have is from a goal front. Burnley didn't score that many goals in the Premier League, but they were successful. They did what they needed to do to get the points they needed to do to get where they wanted to be. So that would be the one concern. I just look back at what happened when Sam Allardyce took charge. Both completely different managers, but he took them from 13th to 8th and that was success at the time. But there was so much negativity from the fan base around Allardyce. Everton felt they simply had to sack him in the summer. So I hope the fans give him some time, because it's not necessarily going to be pretty from the very beginning, but I think it will be effective.
You mentioned that Michael Keane line that we're just hearing, that he is expected to stay at Everton, and that is largely because Sean Dyche is a massive fan of his. But a few more lines that we're hearing as to why the Everton hierarchy have opted for Sean Dyche is one, that they believe he could hit the ground running. We showed you their next 6 fixtures just a minute ago. But also the fact that you mentioned some of the players, James, that he'd worked with. He knows 3 or 4 of the players very well. And we also understand that Marcelo Bielsa really wanted a summer to work with the squad and shape this team and kind of get things how he wanted. So that really, those reasons as to why Everton have opted for the formerly Burnley manager in the end. Let's just show you his Premier League record. This is Sean Dyche's Premier League record from, well, his time at Burnley. Won 72, drawn 68 and lost 118 out of those 258 matches that he was manager for. And James, I think it's a good point, the fact that, you know, he's had a bit of time now, hasn't he? He left Burnley in April last year, so he's had a bit of a reset, a bit of a refresh. And I think he always said, he was on Monday Night Football a while ago with Dave Jones, and he said, you know, he'd take a project that he felt was right for him.
And he clearly feels like this is the right one, despite all the uncertainty at Everton at the moment. One thing that's important as well is he showed during his time at Burnley the ability to work with the ownership there. For 10 years, he built that relationship whereby they didn't necessarily give him all the money he wanted, but he worked within the constraints they had. And Everton are going to have some constraints. They spent so much money over the last few years on players that weren't suited for the football club, and most of them have been unsuccessful. So he's going to work with a limited budget here at Everton. Whether or not he can get some signing-ins in the next few days, I still look at that record. I'm concerned about the goals. The fact that in his time in the Premier League, they've scored less than a goal a game. I think I'm right in saying, which isn't ideal when you look going into this window. Everton needed to sort out their attacking options. So whether or not he can get players in now to help, or more likely he's going to have to work with the players he's got. Saying that, the players he's got are good players. They just need managers to get the best out of them.
Exactly that, in terms of like contextually, and again, this is no disrespect to Burnley, but the players on offer at Everton are better players, you know, and I think actually he's going to have to, eventually he's going to have to strike that balance, but also the fans are going to need to be patient in terms of right now, I'll be honest, for Everton, style of play is not their biggest concern. They concede far too many goals and they're losing too many games. The basics of football. Start winning football matches. Start being difficult to beat. Stop conceding goals. Stop the leaks. And that's what Sean Dyche is good at. So I think what he's going to have is, until he stabilises their league position, then they can start looking at style of play. But I think Everton fans are so far off being saying, oh, he's going to play negative football. Oh, the tactics are going to be this or the... We've seen what the tactics have been. We've seen the money they've invested in players who actually have got quite a high ceiling. You know, you look at the likes of Onana going to Everton. That was a really positive move. He was tipped to go to a lot of big clubs. But look where they are in the table. So it's absolutely about stabilisation. And then Sean Dyche may have to start looking at, how do I jazz this team up? How do I play on the front foot? And also, if you look at, you know, an away day at Everton, when they're at it, that is one of the toughest away grounds to go to, as was Turf Moor. So I think he will be looking at that and saying, home form is massive, this place needs to be a fortress.
Let us know what you think at home as well, of course. As always, just tweet us at Sky Sports News. Use that hashtag #TransferTalk, especially Everton fans. Is it a sensible appointment? Maybe that's the word. Just lastly, this is a really tough question, especially with the kind of everything that's going on at Everton at the moment. Can he keep them up?
Sean Dyche is going to keep Everton in the Premier League. I was just seeing that. Yeah, I was just seeing that. You know, with that little walk that he does with his collars up, and he's like this sort of touch,
he's got
like
air
he's
of confidence about him, doesn't he?
100%. It's a shorter walk from the tunnel this time. He doesn't have to walk across the pitch, but I believe.
Him and Jurgen Klopp in the tunnel.
Oh God! I feel like all the teams in and around that relegation zone now will be a little bit nervous, because he's a manager that's just got the experience of doing exactly that, keeping teams in the Premier League, and for Everton fans, a little bit of time needed, a lot of pressure, not much time to do it, but. Yeah, I think he's got it in him.